As you could probably tell, we've had a lot of activity going on this morning here, especially in this room, and a lot of moving parts that are literally moving as we speak. So we do appreciate your patience, and kind of excited that we have you out here this morning. Every week we get together and try to talk about something meaningful, something that really has some relevance to our community, and we're really jazzed about talking about an operation that we worked on with our federal partners, the FBI, through the Human Trafficking Task Force. Just this past, well, I want to say it was last week, there was an operation called Operation Cross Country that really focused on human trafficking, really victim-centered strategy. And I'm not going to outrun my coverage because I've got just a multitude of subject matter experts here with us this morning to talk about the operation, what it means, what it netted, what it intended to do. We've got our federal partners here with the FBI. Supervisory Special Agent Jason Kaplan is going to join us in just a couple of seconds to really walk you through that operation, to let you know just what they came across over those 3 days during Operation Cross Country. When he's through, I can't tell you how many questions we've gotten over the last year or so since the Human Trafficking Task Force was assembled. I think it was assembled in April of 2016, announced in October of 2016, but our phone, for good reason, rings off the hook. What we want to do stories on these, we want to know more about what it is they do, what it means to the community. Well, we have the opportunity this morning to talk with Captain Demetria Faulkner-Welch. She supervises that task force from a CMPD standpoint through her work with special investigations. So she's really going to kind of walk you through what the task force does, how well we work with our federal partners, and what that means to our community. Last, but certainly not least, is a woman that we all have to really listen closely to. This is a woman, a detective, who's been doing this work. It's a passion of hers for quite some time on the ground. She and some of her colleagues, Detective Ashley Horton, I was talking with her, I guess it was yesterday, just about an hour. And I, having been in law enforcement for more than a couple of decades now, I thought I knew a little something when it came to investigations, but I could have sat there and just listened to this girl forever. I mean, a lot of the misinformation that I had personally about human trafficking and what it means, it was nothing short of revealing. I think our community would be very intrigued to hear what it is that people like Ashley and her colleagues are seeing on the ground. When we wrap this whole thing up, we're not going to do or let you guys walk away without having your questions answered. All three of those subject matter experts will be available for questions, and we'll take them one-on-one and get the proper, appropriate person, subject matter expert, up here to go ahead and answer them. So bear with us. A lot of moving parts, like I couched it at the beginning, but I think that if we just work through this, you'll find it very educational and more than important to your viewers, readers, and listeners. So without further delay, I'd like to bring up Supervisory Special Agent Jason Kaplan.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about Operation Cross Country and the great work that was done by law enforcement agents and their victim services professionals and several community and non-government organizations that have helped us globally. And Operation Cross Country is an operation that the FBI has led now for 11 years in conjunction working closely with our community partners, law enforcement partners, both state, federal, and local. In this case, for this year, the international components included countries like Cambodia, the Philippines, Thailand, the UK, and Canada, and 55 of our FBI field offices here in the United States. After the 4-day operation concluded last week, we've arrested 120 human traffickers and recovered 84 victims who are minors involved in sex trade. Here in North Carolina, the metropolitan areas of Lumberton, Fayetteville, Raleigh, and Charlotte were involved in Operation Cross Country. I'm very proud of the hard work that was conducted by all of the people involved. We recovered 3 minor victims, and we arrested 11 subjects, and we encountered 51 individuals who were involved in the sex trade, most of which were females. I'd like to also talk a little bit about the approach that, in partnership that the FBI has developed when it comes to tackling the threat of human trafficking, particularly the good work that we've done in North Carolina. And what it involves is traditional law enforcement methods, which I think a lot of people are accustomed to, and for us in law enforcement, something that we've implemented for many decades. But with the new human trafficking task force that we've developed and worked in close partnership with Charlotte-Mecklenburg PD here in Charlotte, we've implemented particularly, and the FBI internationally has implemented a victim-centered approach. And I'll let Captain Faulkner and Detective Horton talk a little bit more about that. The reason why I bring it up is that it's a big part of the way Operation Cross Country works and the reason why it is so successful. And without going into too many operational details, I do want to let you know that the operation doesn't just involve police officers, detectives, FBI agents, HSI agents, and other partners. It also involves our victim services specialists and a lot of the partners that they work with. And I'm referring to non-government organizations and community members who are dedicated to supporting the victims who are recovered. And I think we all know that the challenge of human trafficking is substantial. It's very difficult to tackle with traditional law enforcement. And we've determined that in order for law enforcement to be successful in breaking the cycle that a victim finds themselves in, we really need to incorporate a more holistic approach. And that involves victim services specialists that are engaged. They're with us at the site of the operation late at night, and that includes several non-government organizations that are also dedicated to helping the victims, so that the minute that we encounter the victims, we're able to conduct our law enforcement actions, our interviews, and then let the victim services specialists take over the handling of those victims from that point forward. So I think that's one thing that's made Operation Cross Country so successful as it's developed over the last 11 years, and one of the reasons why it was so successful this past week. The last thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is the extension of that partnership that goes outside of just law enforcement to include the victim service specialists and the non-government organizations and community organizations that we work with, but encourage the public to understand how important their role is when it comes to combating human trafficking. And the reason why I bring that up is that a great deal of the cases that we investigate the attention is brought to us by the community. It's by interested citizens who have they understand that something isn't the way it should be when they interact with someone, when they see something that they think there's something wrong. We encourage them to contact us. And I'll mention that the phone number 1-800-CALL-FBI is a phone number that you can call anyone who has a concern about the possibility of human trafficking occurring. They're free to call that number and express their concerns, and that information will be passed to law enforcement agencies in an effort to try to determine whether there's human trafficking occurring there. And I think at this point I'd like to pass it on to Captain Faulkner.
Good morning. I'm Captain Faulkner Welch, and I am the captain over the Human Trafficking Unit. We developed this unit or partnered with the FBI sometime in 2016, between April and officially October of 2016. The task force consists of 2 detectives and 1 management analyst. And our actual detectives actually work out of the FBI office so that they can work closely in this partnership and so that we can share the information about the cases. Some of the things that are important to us and important to this task force that we have, number one, we do the traditional investigations with the cases. A lot of the cases come in from the patrol unit, and what we've done as a department, we have a block on our case reports so that if you suspect anything with human trafficking, an officer can put a check, and that information is routed back to our detectives that work out of the FBI office. So that information that we receive from our patrol detectives, that information is also shared with the FBI so we can work jointly on the investigation. Something else that we do, we look at the education piece. What we've done a lot of is going out into the public, trying to educate the public about human trafficking. We have the toll-free number that you can call if you suspect anything, but what we want the public to realize, to understand what they see, if they recognize it, they can give a call. And even things that you can look for in your own home that could be happening, that are signs or clues that something could be happening or your child could be transitioning into this lifestyle. And the last approach is it's victim-centered, and that's probably the most important thing. What we're not doing is trying to get a lot of arrests. What is important to us as a department and this task force is making sure that we rescue these kids kids from this type of lifestyle and try to get them back on track. And that's why we have so many services and partnering with non-governmental agencies to get this accomplished. So we all come together as a team to work for the common goal of rescuing the kids. And if we're lucky, we may prosecute people with some of the cases, but what's most important to us is, of course, children. And I'm sure you can understand, if you don't have children, I'm sure everyone has nieces and nephews, so you can kind of understand. And what we want to do is, as quickly as possible, get them back to a normal lifestyle, and that's through delivering and recommending services. And it's kind of tailored to each female that we find. It's not that everybody goes to this services. We take the time to sit down to find out the child's story and then figure out what services would best suit their needs so that we can be successful in this endeavor. And what I'd like to do, one of the detectives, we have her here. I'd like to invite her in so she can go more in detail, because she's worked with a lot of kids that have been rescued, interviewing them, and she has a background with our rape unit, and then she transitioned into human trafficking. So I'd like to turn it over to Detective Horton.
Thank you. I'd like to kind of give you an idea, an overview of what human trafficking is. So from a law enforcement side, we are looking at sex and labor trafficking. We obviously kind of see sex trafficking more often. It's for minors and for adults. So anyone under 18, you cannot choose to be a prostitute, if you want to use those words, okay? So anyone that's helping facilitate that, anyone that's, renting a room, driving them to that date, profiting off of those dates, you are going to be complicit in that crime. So we are actually going to target you and go after you. If you're 18 and over, then we're looking at forced fraud or coercion. So if you're threatened, if you're assaulted, if you've been promised something out of this life that you're not going to get, we're going to target the people that are making you do that as well. So from our side, we're going to look at those types of people and try to prosecute them as best we can. But on the other side, we're also looking to take those victims, adults and minors, and get them reunited with family, get them reunited back into life and society that make them successful. And that's one thing that we, really strive to work within our own department, is to have that victim-centered approach, as well as working with, Department of Social Services, nonprofit organizations, and various other agencies in Charlotte that can help us kind of help that person grow back into who they should be in life, right? As part of a community, what we want to look for is if our kids, these are our kids, and I think that's what's important, is to look, there's no race, there's no socioeconomic status that says they will or will not be, in this life. These are our children. Yes, they are people that are brought from foreign countries, but the majority are our children, our neighbors, our kids at school, whatever you want to deem it as, but there's nothing, it's black, white, Hispanic kids, Asians, and they're ours. So we need to take a responsibility back for them. How do we do that? We start looking for signs. We look for if they're truant at school. Are they missing school often? Are they showing up with things that we know we didn't purchase for them or that they can't afford? Are their hair, nails, clothes, things that are new to them? And are they distancing themselves? Are they hanging out? Who are they hanging out with? And I often try to speak to community groups and say, let's get back involved. It's okay to be involved in people's lives and show that we care and teach them kind of value system and what they can do in their life. We really strive to have a good partnership with our community and really grow to teach these kids and adults that they are worth something. And so that's kind of where we are as a whole in our unit. It's not just from a law enforcement side, it's actually to try to get them reunited with society.
I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions for Detective Horton, Supervisory Special Agent Kaplan, Captain Faulkner Welch. The floor is yours, ladies and gentlemen.
Alex?
How do the suspects and victims in this cycle typically first come in contact with each other, and then how does it get to the point where it is?
You know, it's kind of hard to say specifically because each person is unique to that, but majority of them are maybe a relationship. It's kind of what I would say deem as a domestic violence relationship is how a lot start out. We see that where they meet, you know, at the mall, at the transit center, at school. We've got people meeting at, you know, just down the street in the neighborhood. So it could be kind of a, you know, courting in essence of, you know, kind of old school there. Or it could just be a friend or an opportunity I can help you with something that you don't like in your life.
Is Charlotte the hub of this activity here in North Carolina, or is it just kind of spread out? You mentioned several different cities.
Well, I think the answer is difficult, and part of the reason why is that a reliable way to track that metric hasn't really been determined. For us here in Charlotte, now with the task force, we're starting to get a better understanding of the violation that's occurring here. But I think generally you have to consider the fact that we just spend an immense amount of energy training the public to try to understand like what human trafficking looks like. And so when we have communities that have a lot of human trafficking reported, or maybe a large increase in human trafficking reported, for us the consideration is that maybe we're doing a better job of explaining what human trafficking even is or what it looks like. So I think that it would be very hard for us to answer that question, because if there's a community that doesn't have a lot of human trafficking being reported to the law enforcement in that community, it's possible that it exists but just hasn't been discovered yet. So I don't know that I'm able to answer whether it is, but I can tell you that there is a problem here in Charlotte, and I think we're doing a good job of tackling it.
Have you seen an increase in reports here?
Yes, we have. I think we're becoming more aware. It's actually a topic we talk about now. So I think we've done a great job, and hopefully we'll continue to do a great job in Charlotte to report it.
Who are the customers and what penalties do they face?
The customers, you mean the subjects that are being arrested? Or or you mean the ones who are ordering dates?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you can't put a label on it. It ranges from, you know, all walks of life in Charlotte. You know, that would be a John if you were to say that. What the penalties we have is when we do reversals, which is kind of not what we do in essence. It's more of like a vice or a role reversal, if you'd say, for our divisions. But you know, I believe it's still a misdemeanor crime, and they go to, you know, a court. And then they have their options just like everyone else does in court.
I think what I would add to that is part of the benefit that comes with the task force, such as this one, is that we can leverage the federal laws against some of these cases. So if it is just going to be a state charges, the penalties may not be as substantial as some people might think they should be. But an example of a case would be Samuel Pratt was someone who was involved. He was from Gastonia. He had numerous girls that he was prostituting in or trafficking in Charlotte and in South Carolina, and he just received life in prison for the criminal enterprise that he was running. So I think that's where you see the benefits of our partnership with federal law enforcement, and Ashley meets with the U.S. Attorney's Office on a regular basis, as do the agents for the FBI that work these cases, and I think that's the strength that comes from the partnership.
What ages were the victims in the bust in Charlotte?
You mean during this last operation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the concern with talking about those details is that these are women typically who are exploited at every turn. And so I think that my concern with getting into any details about the victims, we get very sensitive about that because we just don't want there to be an opportunity for them to be exploited again in any way. So I think that we would just say they're below 18 years old. Anybody else?
You guys mentioned some of the signs that the parents can look for, that the public can look for. Is there anything at truancy, anything just that comes to mind that you didn't mention before?
Yeah, your social media, for sure. The phones and computers, as amazing as they are and how we can get in touch with everyone, they are also kind of a detriment when you look at how many people can actually reach you and see what you post, your pictures, and use those and use what you post in your life. When we look at Facebook or Snapchat or Kik, and various others, Twitter's, Instagram, list goes on. And if we're not in tune and looking through those and kind of knowing what our kids are doing, then anybody can reach them and talk them into something.
Without going into too many like tactical details about this operation, can you just talk about what it involves? Like undercover officers, do you get these suspects to admit what they're doing, or how are they ended up arrested and charged? What can you tell us about the operation itself?
From the vice standpoint, after the operation is over, yes, the people are charged. When vice does their stings, our operation stings with vice. But this one is kind of different, and as they talked about, not giving details. But if it's something where it's solicitation, yes, we do lock them up immediately for soliciting prostitution, or the charges could vary depending on, what actually occurred.
Are you able to say anything about how the operation works? It involves undercover officers or that?
If we're doing something which is totally different from this one, yes, that one does. But, and they all can vary. I mean, it just varies from one end of the spectrum to the next.
I think what we can say is that, as the captain described earlier, that we follow somewhat, it's not orthodox the way we conduct our operations now, but the very first step is very traditional. And so I would say that probably what a lot of people are accustomed to may fall into the recipe for how we would conduct an operation like OCC. The difference here is the second components, which law enforcement traditionally does not bring in civilian components into their law enforcement operation. In this case, because of the support that the victims need, and that we need healthy victims because we also need healthy witnesses later, and we see the value to that. So we make sure that they receive the services that they need to break that cycle. And in Operation Cross Country, a big difference was the big piece that comes after we encounter the victim so that they can get support.
Guys, we appreciate it. We're going to let these
Give
busy
the
folks
proper
get back to
spellings
work.
of everyone's name while you're up there, please.
Jason Kaplan, Jason Kaplan, Supervisory Special Agent with FBI.
Detective Ashley Horton, ASHLEY, HORTON.
Captain Demetria Faulkner Welch, DEMETRIA FAULKNER-WELCH.
And I did also, and thank you guys. Appreciate everyone and how busy everyone is, and hopefully they found it just as enlightening as we did. There is I know that there should be some B-roll, some video up on the FBI's website as we speak of some of the operation that you are more than welcome to go ahead and visit that website. Lift that video from there, and that will assist you greatly, I would suspect, in putting some type of visual story together. Shelley?
Not of Charlotte's operation.
I believe this is out in Denver.
I think it's out of Denver, but as part of the coordinated effort, we did have an FBI team go in and shoot video that is appropriate and not going to impact any kind of investigations moving forward, et cetera. I just want to clarify that.
And I also believe that Shelley and her folks will be putting out a press release that kind of captures everything that we just spoke about in writing, just to help you along the way. And I know there was a lot of twists and turns there, but she's got some relevant information that I think you'll find more than helpful in filing your stories today. So I appreciate that. Anything looming?
Rob, if you could just talk about the pizza delivery. There's been a series of pizza delivery robberies. What can you tell us about those, and any message to people who deliver pizzas about their safety?
Yeah, thankfully no one hurt at this point, but how long is it going to be till things escalate and someone is hurt? Cowardly, right? Just guys and girls out there trying to hustle, make a buck, make an honest living, and to have someone set them up to rob them like this. Yeah, it's concerning, something that our division folks are working on, something our robbery folks are certainly working on. But look, they don't carry a lot of money on them, these people. A lot of times they're kids, right? They're paying their way through school, or just trying to make ends meet. Probably a lot of them, their first jobs, and to see something like this, it's concerning. Thankfully, no one's been hurt up until this point. We don't want to get to the point in which somebody is hurt. So what we're doing everything and anything we can to go ahead and resolve that. And again, we're leaning heavily on patrol and our robbery detectives in that regard. Everybody good? All righty. Well, I guess we'll see you next go around. Look for that press release coming from Shelley Lynch with the FBI. Again, visit their website. You can lift that B-roll off there, and I think you'll find it more than helpful. Again, just to frame reiterate what Shelley was saying, that was not a local operation. That was, I believe, staged out in Denver, just for your edification. So, thank you.